I am Anisa Lewis from Positive Parenting, and I started my business about 4 years ago. So I had got to the point in my career, in my teaching career, where I was a deputy head of a very exclusive private school down in London, and I took the decision that I didn't want to become a head anymore. I wanted to take that step to starting my own business and supporting parents, because I was that parent who had to read all the books and had to Google everything to find out all the answers. And I was like, there has to be an easier way to support parents rather than having to gather information from thousands of sources. And so childhood, early years, a complete passion of mine. And I want to help parents get through that time in a child's life, which is, it can be really difficult. And now, as a mother myself, my daughter is now 12, so she's just started in year 8 at our local senior school. And so that is taking me from a whole different experience in parenting. You think you've got it sussed, and then the teenage years hit, and you're like, oh, great. And you can no longer just sort of pick them up and put them into a bear hug and all the rest of it. So I am with you on this journey. A few years ago, I was a preschool teacher. So I've done preschool, reception, you name it, all the way up to year 6. So I've sort of taught everything and experienced most things, either from a parent or from a teaching side. So I've got lots of tips which have been practical and have been used absolutely in my own parenting, but also in a classroom context as well, and work beautifully. We're going to be exploring the child development and what is appropriate behaviour for your children at different points in their development, and as they grow and develop, what happens to them and where they go. Quite often the behaviour that we see at different ages is actually developmental. I'm not making excuses for them at all, but it is part of their developmental growing up, and it's how we can harness their individuality in order to help them be the best version of themselves that they can be. Okay, so let's have a look at sort of typical behavior from a 1-year-old to a 4-year-old in their overview of their development. So at this age, they're demonstrating their assertiveness and their free will. So I think we've probably all seen that through tantrums and meltdowns in Tesco, and then wanting to do things from themselves. I always remember that stage, me do it, on everything that was going on. We're also going through toilet training, fun times there. So we're establishing sleeping routines as well, which can be an interesting experience for all parents. It is absolutely and completely normal up until the age of about 1 for your children to wake in the night. It does not make it easier to deal with, but it certainly is saying these parents who tell you that their children sleep through the night probably are hiding some hidden truth in there somewhere, so you are not alone. We also go through teething problems from this age group. So we're introducing our children to food at this point, which can in itself have issues with fussy eaters, with allergies and intolerances that might come about. So that is a whole different area completely. So we also go through things like separation anxiety at this age, and perhaps the need for maybe a security blanket or a comfort object which keeps them feeling secure. We have shyness and we have reluctance to mix with other children at times. And then also we have the swinging pendulum between hyperactivity and then complete inactivity. So the one I skipped over there for this age group was bad behavior. So we quite often label behavior as bad at this stage. And actually what the children are doing is they're just trying to understand the world around them. You know, so them shoving a toy down the toilet might be incredibly annoying to us and incredibly expensive, as we have to call out the plumber. However, they are just working out cause and effect. And we are very quick, I'm not saying you are, but as a society, to label them doing bad things when actually they're being inquisitive and they're questioning and they're exploring the world around them. So I just sort of wanted to make that distinction there. Right, so we're traveling from the age of 4 up now into the ages of 4 till 9. So this is quite quite an epic period in a child's life, because they usually start school at around this time. They begin to have opinions and views of their own. You can really see evidence of their personality popping through, and peers start to play a part in what's going on, possibly even around the world of peer pressure and things like that. Behaviour, yes, tantrums still go on at this age, so you are not alone if your child is having meltdowns and is perhaps overwhelmed with emotion. Yeah, feelings, fears, phobias, all that kind of stuff can develop around this age group. And then obviously when it comes to nutrition, we're looking at introducing manners to them, their eating habits, and then their general behaviour. I know we had some questions from some people who had sort of the more teens and tweens age group, so I am going to cover that as well. So let's move on. So we've got tweens and teens. Tweens years start at around the age of 8 or 9. Now, there is no normal development for a child. Every child gets there when they get there, but from my experience, it usually starts at the age of 8 or 9, and I usually call it a mini teenage-itis. When I was teaching in a very old Victorian building, and they went from year 2 to year 3 and 4 on the next floor, and it used to seem that when they went up that red staircase to the next year groups, they went through like this mini teenage-itis-ness, and they just became different human beings than they were when they were down on my floor in year 1 and year 2. So there is definitely something in that. Lots of hormones going on, onset of puberty, which is sort of moody and aggressive and antisocial. They're really searching for their independence and their place in the world, and they're quite egocentric in their own little bubble, and perhaps are not understanding the bigger picture of what is going on around them. During this stage of their life, confidence and self-esteem can really take a hit. So it's something that I work quite hard at with the parents that I work with and the children that I work with, to really boost that confidence and self-esteem. They're questioning who are they, and we quite often find, as we've all been through the teenage years, that this is a period of conflict with your parents and those in authority around you, because perhaps teenagers think they know better. And peers are incredibly important to them at this age group. I just wanted to have a look at speech and communication, because quite often a child can become very, very frustrated, and therefore their behaviour goes potentially out the wall, or we can label them as bad behaviour, because they can't communicate their needs. So obviously at birth there are no words. At 6 months, potentially they could have 5 to 6 words that they can speak, and then it goes up from there. It's not until they're really sort of 24 months that they've got a vocabulary that they can use and communicate with. And then we jump to 18 years of age, and they've got something like 55,000 to 60,000 words. And possibly by that age, we're all wishing that we'd never taught them to speak at all. But there we go. So I just thought it's worth noting that sometimes behavior issues that we're dealing with actually come down to a communication issue, and them becoming frustrated that they haven't been heard or understood in a particular way. Now on to the juicy bit of the talk. So this is my control bubble. So what I find quite a lot with is that your child is in their little bubble and you're in your little bubble, and what happens is you're just banging heads, and then it explodes. So what we're doing here is we're trying to look at what we can control as parents, and therefore what your child is also trying to control in their world. We are here in our little bubble of control, and we are in control of our actions, our behavior, our words, our effort, our attitude, and our ideas. We're also in control of how we choose to have fun, how we're handling stress. You know, so many things is within our little bubble. And then you've got to think that your child is also in their little bubble, trying to control what's going on. And you're saying to your child, wear the blue trousers, and your child's going, I don't want to wear the blue trousers. And that's when you're having the buffering effect and then the explosion. So this white area around your bubbles is what I call the area of influence. And there's a very, very fine line between control and influence, but there is a line. So it could be that if one of your issues is, I don't know, getting your child dressed in the morning, that you actually can go, okay, I'll give you a choice. You can wear the blue skirt or you can wear the pink skirt. At the end of the day, you don't really mind what they wear as long as they're wearing something that's suitable for the environment they're going in. Your child feels in control because although you've narrowed the choices down, you have still empowered them with a choice. That works with 2-year-olds, that works with 12-year-olds, it works with higher age groups as well. So it's just worth thinking about how you can influence your child without trying to control them. There are some times, and one of them is safety, where actually it is okay for you to be in control. Because at the end of the day, whatever age your child is, they might not have the developmental awareness to know about cars and cyclists and pedestrians and all the rest of it. So there are times where your control is absolutely and completely to be used to keep your children safe. So what we can do, and something that was brought up by quite a few parents actually, I had questions about how do I keep calm? How do I stay positive when I'm dealing with what's going on, was a couple of the questions that I had through. So one of the things I want to introduce you to is something called the 5-second rule. Liz has probably heard me talking about the 5-second rule before. And in fact, I think I recognize Walter, so he might have heard me talking about it as well. But the 5-second rule is something that was brought in or created by a lady called Mel Robbins in the States. I don't know whether she's a psychiatrist or psychologist, but she's certainly a self-help guru. And the theory is that your brain and your emotions or your intelligence have 5 seconds before they collide. So what we're asking you to do here is what we tend to do when we're dealing with our children is go to our default behavior. So for example, your default behavior could be shouting. So when we're in this position of stress or dealing with something or having lots of stimulus come at us at once and we're trying to deal with our children at the same time, we tend to go back to our default behavior. So the 5-second rule is a really great one for adults and older children, where you just say, okay, breathe in through your nose and then count out 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And by the time you get to 1, you can choose to do your default behavior, or you could choose to potentially deal with the situation you're dealing with in a different way. But it gives you time to process it without going back to your default. It's not foolproof, but it's trying to get you away from what you would do automatically and trying to help you, because it's always the way. I know when I do something that I think about what I should have done right 5 minutes after I've dealt with it. So it's giving your brain and your emotions time in order to sort that out. If you're interested in having a look at what she does a bit further, then there is a TED talk, which is about 16 minutes long, I think, all about the 5-second rule. And her surname is Robbins, if you would like to have a look at that. As I said, she's not particularly parenting, but it's quite a useful one to apply to parenting situations. A wonderful way to be in the circle of influence rather than the circle of control is to give them choices. So as I explained, you know, the red skirt or the blue skirt, you choose. It could also be that when your child comes to you and says 5 minutes before you're about to serve a meal, you know, can I have a snack? And your immediate response is, you know, not on your life, love. I've been slaving over these fish fingers and chips for hours and that's what you're going to eat. And then they start to have a paddy about it. And you can just say to them, look, you've got a choice. You know, you can keep going and you won't get a cookie or you won't get the snack, or you can wait, have your dinner, and if you're still hungry, we can have a snack afterwards. So choices can be used in quite a nice way. If they then continue to have a strop about not getting a snack 5 minutes before dinner, that's when you can say to them, well, I'm sorry, I've made the choice now. It's not happening. but you have empowered them and you've influenced them. Another great tip here is when and then. So when you have done that, then you can do this. And that works with little people and it works with big people. But again, what you're doing is you're influencing them and you're empowering them to make good choices. And then the last thing I would say on this whole control side of this is pick your battles. You know, if we as adults were henpecked as much as our children were through the day, then I wouldn't be surprised if we were having tantrums by the end of it. A complete aside, how many times do you think your child hears the word no in a day? It's something like 136 times a day for the word no. Obviously, it's depending on the context and the day and what's going on. It can be anywhere up to about 500 times they're hearing a negative instead of a positive. How many times do you think they're hearing the word yes? It's something about 11, around that. So if you're thinking 136 no's and 11 yeses, no wonder they're coming in for a battle every time you open your mouth and it feels like you're coming up against something. I would also say here that you are your child's greatest role model. And so I'm not saying that you're rolling on the floor in Tesco's having an absolute strop. I'm not saying that at all. But, you know, I know from my own daughter, she would come out with little sayings or something and I'd think, where on earth has she got that from? And then I'd realize she got it from me. Like she would say to the dog, don't even think about it. Like the dog's going to think of anything. But I have obviously said that enough to her that she has computed it, regurgitated it, and now is applying it to the poor dog who's just looking at her going, yeah, it's not happening. So think about where your influence lies. Your children are always watching you. So if your default behavior is shouting, then the chances are your children are going to be responding to situations with shouting. That's how it works. A complete side note on shouting, whispering is very effective. So you can shout, whisper is all I can say. Because what happens with shouting is your children are here shouting, you then shout above them, and all you're doing is climbing this ladder and then it explodes and it escalates. So here's your child shouting, you whisper, you're going in underneath them. And if nothing else, your child goes, what? What did you say? I didn't catch that. Even a 2-year-old, because they're suddenly like, they're dealing with it in a different way. And as I said, you can be very cross when you shout, very cross indeed, but they have to whisper. So my child is 12 and I probably shout once a year, maybe that. So, you know, I went through a shouty phase, but it hasn't happened for a while. So it is doable, not shouting. And I'm by far not a perfect parent. There are days where, yeah, I could definitely learn from someone like me. And there are other days where I think, oh, this is good. I'm practicing what I preach. So try the whispering. So a lot of questions that I got were around hitting, biting, whining, back chat and eye rolling, screaming and shouting, not showing empathy, being rude, and only wanting one parent over the other parent. So, attention. It's not rocket science. Our children will do anything for our attention. And so, therefore, if we are feeding their need for attention by responding to the hitting, by responding to the biting, obviously there are things that we need to do to keep our children safe. So I'm not saying don't go in there and deal with it. But if we are responding to them for all the negatives, then that is what they're going to give us back. They are going to continue doing the things that get them noticed because they just want our attention. And obviously as parents, we don't want to go out to be negative and we don't want to go out for only the wrong things. But you know what? If that's what they're going to get, they'll take it. They'll take it. That's the bottom line. So my challenge to you is to really try and focus on the positives. I think as a society, we are so quick to focus in on, say, potentially the 10% of our day that didn't go very well, or the 10% of our day that we thought, oh, I could do better on that. And we forget the 90% of the day that actually went really, really well. So who uses praise in their house? If you haven't tried praise, then I would really recommend it. And I'm not saying praise for praise's sake, and I'm not saying sarcastic praise. My poor daughter, I'm an Australian, I am quite sarcastic by nature, and she, bless her little soul, has to go, Mummy, are you being sarcastic or are you being truthful? We've developed a common language now, so we're not quite in that. But, you know, praise meaningly. I've lost all my words, I do apologize. So an example of that could be with the teeth brushing. So you could, you know, you're downstairs and you're saying, right, time to brush our teeth. And there's an absolute stop because no one wants to brush their teeth. But they turn and they look towards the staircase. And you're like, wow, isn't that great? I can see you're looking there. I know you want to brush your teeth. And your child's going, no. But you're like, oh, I know this is meaningful. We're going to get up those stairs. Look at you. You're even putting one foot in front of the other. And again, you're not doing it sarcastically. You're doing it encouragingly. And you get to the top and you're like, oh, would you like Mummy to do it, or you're going to do it today? So, oh, you're going to do it. Well, that is awesome. I'm going to tell Daddy all about this when you've done this, you know, and you're thinking, I'm an intelligent human being. Why am I saying all of these things? But you know what? Your children respond to it. They go, oh, this is so important that Mummy's going to tell Daddy all about it. And you're thinking, Daddy doesn't give two hoots whether you've brushed your teeth or not. But you know what? I will be telling him, and I'll be telling him so loud that you can hear me telling him as well, because that back praise is such a lovely thing for children to hear. Another lovely way to praise is, you know, something really nice has happened and you're talking to your mum or dad on the phone, or to your sister or to your best friend, you go, actually, before you say anything else, I've just got to tell you about this, knowing full well that your child can hear what you are saying, so that they are trying to pick up this wonderful positive aura that's going on. You know, if your children are hitting each other and biting each other, you can use praise. It may come out as sarcastic, but you know your children best, and you know what would work for you. But you know what you can say to your children, you know what? I could see you really thinking about hitting your brother there and you didn't. And I just want to say, well done. You know, well done for thinking before you did it. And at that point they're going, well, I wasn't thinking about that, but oh, I've been noticed for that. Great. And the behavior starts to diminish. If you can get in with praise before you see something about to hit off, even better. Because praise can diffuse a situation like that. The other thing I would do is I would praise processes rather than end achievements. So I would praise determination. I would praise helpfulness, kindness, respect, all those words which are really abstract concepts for our children, especially our little ones, that they need reminding and building these abstract concepts into the concrete. So the more you can acknowledge their journey along the way with, oh, you're being so helpful, I'm just so thankful. Or you're in the supermarket and they're not having a strop and you're like, gosh, you're being really patient today. Thank you so much. Just acknowledging the journey your children are going on rather than the end result of the fact that they got a great spelling result or something like that. Or, you know, they put their pants on by themselves. Actually, dressing themselves is determination, it's perseverance, it's coordination. There are so many levels to simple acts that our children have to do. The other thing I want to talk about in regards to attention, especially when it comes to hitting and biting and whining and back chat and all this other stuff, is that when our children are seeking the attention and potentially say we have asked them to do something and we then get distracted. So the first behavior was go and brush your teeth. We then get completely distracted by the fact that they are rolling their eyes, back chatting, they've just whacked their brother as they've gone up the stairs, and we forget about the primary behavior and we go to the secondary behavior. And so what I want you to try and do is not to, obviously, if the health and safety of the child is in jeopardy, you have to deal with the secondary behavior. But what I want you to do is be a bit like those horses with the blinkers on. So I want you, if you've asked them, I don't know, to put their shoes on, to go and brush their teeth, to go to bed, and they've taken steps to do it, even if you get the eye rolling, ignore that for the moment. Keep with your path of getting them to the potty, getting them to bed, getting them to brush their teeth, rather than being distracted and dealing with the secondary behavior. Once they're then doing what you've asked them to do, or at a later date, depending on the age of your child, you can then go back and deal with the secondary behavior. And you can say, actually, you know, when I asked you to go upstairs earlier and you rolled your eyes at me, that's not okay. So it's not ignoring it and it's not letting them get away with it, but it's picking your moments to deal with that situation. Because again, it's all around attention. They want our attention. They want us, they want to be noticed, and they will do anything to do it. So we can forget the path that we wanted them to be on, and they take us off on an extreme tangent, and then it all hits off from there. So I had a question about, in fact, I had quite a few around sharing, and yeah, when the toddler doesn't want to share with their siblings. And anyway, so I had some questions around sharing. Now, I am not a fan of asking your children to share. I'm happy if you disagree with me. I am very big on turn taking instead. So, you know, I wouldn't expect Liz to come up to me and go, oh, I'd like to use your phone now. And someone would say to me, well, you have to share with Liz. And I'm like, well, no, I don't. It's my phone. I'm not sharing it. You know, I wouldn't expect someone to come and share my lipstick with me or share my car, or, you know, so we have to put things into context. Your child is playing potentially peacefully with something. They're engrossed in a task. And then we're like, oh, just share with little Jimmy. It'll be fine. And actually, it's not okay. So what I tend to do is I tend to say, turn taking. So, you know, Jimmy, when you finished your turn, then can you give it to Ellie, please? So that actually they can finish what they're doing. Now, 9 times out of 10 when I did this with my preschoolers, so, well, no, they were 2, 3 and 4-year-olds in my preschool class, they literally would take about 1 more minute, 30 more seconds, and then they go, here, Freddie, you can have the toy now. And I'd be like, because had I asked them to share, there would have been a huge drop and a huge tantrum and nothing. I wouldn't, well, we'd still been there at lunchtime dealing with it. But actually giving them the autonomy to be in control and then to choose what happens with that said item is a huge path to independence. And I really feel if you haven't tried it, do and see what results you get. Ping me an email, send me a message and let me know what the difference was between asking your child to share and asking them to take their turn. I'm not saying it's going to go perfectly every time, but just see what happens. So this one for me is incredibly powerful. So this is a technique to use with those people who came to me with tantrums, screaming and shouting, rudeness from their children. There was one question about only wanting one parent over the other. This is a really lovely one to use with your children to diffuse situations, and it works with little ones and it certainly works with bigger ones as well. So quite often our children don't want us to fix them. They just want to be understood. So in the heat of the moment, you simply say to your children, you name for them what's going on without opinion, without comment, without problem solving. And you simply go, for example, I can see you're really angry. I can hear it in your voice. I understand that your brother taking your toy is unfair. Or I can see you're really frustrated. I understand that me asking you to turn off your tablet for the 6th time tonight could be not what you want to do. I hear you. Now, it's not stopping them doing what they're doing, but it's just acknowledging what's going on for them and helping them to be understood. So I use this quite a lot in my preschool class. I use it with my 12-year-old. She can hear me. And so it works. And so this particular 4-year-old that used to have the most epic tantrums, I can't tell you. You'd sort of come in the morning thinking, what mood are they in today? What are they going to present me with? And I would just say to this child, you know, I can see you're cross, I understand, I hear, you know, whatever combination of those words were relevant. And this child would just go, like that, and she'd stop. And she'd walk away, or I'd say, oh, would you like a cuddle now? And she'd come and get a cuddle, or whatever was appropriate at the time. All this child wanted to do was to be understood. She didn't want me to fix her. She didn't want me to try and problem solve for her. She just wanted me to acknowledge these big emotions that were going on for her. So I would really encourage you to use, especially through those tantrum years, those terrible 2s, the 3s, even 4 and 5-year-olds who are just still feeling the emotions but not understanding them. You know, anger, frustration, sadness. These are all really big emotions. They don't even have a chance of understanding unless we help them and give them a name. So I really do encourage you to do the I see, I hear, I understand. So see in those situations if you can do I see, I hear, I understand, and if it will diffuse it. Another one you can use is to say yes instead of saying no. So again, we're going back to the amount of times our kids hear the word no and the amount of times our kids hear the word yes. Now, I'm not saying say yes so that they become spoiled or privileged or anything like that, but we're just trying to change the way they hear language. So in regards to the noisy train at 6 a.m., we could have gone, yes, you can use the train when I'm up and about. Or yes, you can use the train when on the clock it says 7. Or if you've got one of those sun and moon clocks, you might have one that, you know, when the sun is on the clock, then you can use the train. What we're trying to do there is, again, you're giving them a choice, you're empowering them, and you're not trying to say no. The other thing you can do is you can say, yes, you know, let me wake up and I'll think about it. So again, they're not hearing no. So I know when I use no with my daughter that she's already ready for a comeback. She's already ready to talk to me about why she has to do. She's the greatest debater on the planet. And so when she hears yes, she sometimes goes, all right. And I've even used it to say, she's come and said, oh, I want to do an activity or something. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. Yes, let's think about that in the summer holidays, which is about 7 months away or something. And she was like, oh, all right. And off she goes. So try the yes over the no. Now, I will tell you now, it is incredibly difficult. I have been practicing this technique for about 4 years, and I still am at the point where I'm going, yes, no, no, yes. And then I get my sentence out because we are so programmed to say no. So it's quite interesting. I just want to move on to self-motivation. So I had questions around boundaries, rudeness, homework and chores, and using rewards and them backfiring. So I wanted to sort of look at the self-motivation. So quite often in those situations, we have imposed what we want on our children, and their voice is lost in the proceedings. And so what I'm encouraging you here to do is to hear your children's voice, you know, consult them. Obviously, some situations it's not appropriate, but on the whole, if you're putting a boundary in place, discuss it with them, talk to them. You know, what are their thoughts? It's not saying that you have to agree with them, and it's not saying that you have to do as they say, but you can come together and you can formulate something that perhaps is better than what you had originally thought. A lovely one that works for children of all ages is something called high five. So you can use it, this is more around routines and them getting homework done or getting themselves up and organized in the morning. So you simply draw around your hand on a piece of paper, and then in each of the fingers or on the tops of the fingers, you write what, well, in discussion with them, for example, if we take the homework question about battles to get homework done, you know, what do you need to do in order to get your homework done? So I need my pencil, I need my homework, I just need to get on with it. And you think of the things that you put in there. And then you say to them, oh, where are you in your high five for getting your homework done? And they say, oh, I've got my pencil case, I've got my book, I'm just sitting down to do it. Could you sit with me? Well, of course I can, no problem at all. And you can, and then at the end of the process, you give each other a high five. So there's no reward involved. It simply is them leading their own routine. It works really well for the mornings. You know, so what do you need to do in the morning? I need to brush my teeth. I need to get dressed. I need to have my breakfast. I need to put my shoes on. I need to put my coat on. We need to leave. And so you're not saying to them, have you put your coat on? Have you eaten your breakfast? Where is your lunch? Where is your snack? Da, 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 da. You're just saying to them, where are you in your high five? And then when you get it done, you high five each other. And that is the reward in itself. But the key thing here is, yes, the high five is lovely, but the key thing here is about hearing their voice and encouraging them to contribute to something that is going to impact them. If you're going to do rewards with your children, and you know, sometimes rewards are important to give the carrot to get them to do what they need to do, I would do something like a family reward, that you're all adding pom-poms in the jar or pieces of pasta into a pot or something like that. So actually, as a family and as a group, as a team, you are working towards something. So it could be that you decide that you are all trying to catch each other being kind. So if you're catching each other being kind, you can put a pom-pom into the jar. And then at the end, say you get 20 pom-poms, your family gets a reward. That way, it really doesn't matter if Anisa has only put 2 in and Liz has put 17 in. We are contributing to something as a family rather than us as an individual. And you can't take pom-poms out for bad behavior. Once they're in and they've been acknowledged. But that might help you get around the, well, I'm not doing that unless you do that, or, you know, I'm going to play up because you've promised me this. It takes the sting out of it a bit. So I would like you in the chat box now, if you feel you want to, is just to tell me one takeaway that you are going to try with your family starting tomorrow. You know, one takeaway. What has been important to you about this webinar tonight? And what is your golden nugget of information that you really want to try with your family or your kids or your partner as of tomorrow morning? So I think I have now talked for far, far too long, so I'm going to hand it back over, and thank you all very much for listening and for giving me your takeaways. I really appreciate that.
I don't want to take up any more of our time. I wanted to just thank Anisa so much and thank all of you for, especially those of you who submitted your questions in advance. It was so helpful, and I think all of us have learned so much. I certainly have. Just at the end of this, we'll definitely be sending out the recording of this webinar as well as a blog post with the highlights, like all of these tips that you guys just shared, just recapping those things. And yeah, so thank you so much for coming, and we'll definitely be in touch. And I hope that you certainly take up Anisa on her offer for those 20-minute sessions as well.